When AXIOM process first starts, you will see the options to create a new case, browse to an existing case and add evidence to it, or if you've already worked with AXIOM process, you'll see cases listed under the section Open a Recent Case. Because this is a new installation of AXIOM process, we'll select the option to create a new case. This brings us to the Case Details screen. You'll notice there are several sections here beginning with case information. We can provide a case number and select a case type from the drop-down menu. Below that, we have to specify a location for our case files as well as any acquired evidence. Now by default, AXIOM process will create a folder named AXIOM plus the date and time when you started AXIOM process. It defaults to go into the root of the drive, but we could select another location simply by clicking the Browse link next to the text entry field. For this example, I'm going to store this case folder on my desktop. To get there, we'll select the Browse button, then choose our desktop under this PC, and at the bottom right of the window, I'll click on the Select Folder button. Notice that path is now populated under the location for case files. Below that, the location for acquired evidence is populated with the same path and folder name because again, by default, AXIOM process is storing any acquired evidence for this case within the case folder. There's another Browse button located here if we'd like to store acquired evidence in a separate location. And this brings us to the Scan Information section. This is listed as Scan 1. We can have multiple scans across the same evidence items, or within a case we could add additional evidence items to that case. There's a field here where I can enter my name. And below that is a description field where I can provide information about the evidence items I'm adding to the case or other actions that I'm taking. At the bottom is the Report Options section. By default, AXIOM process utilizes a magnet forensics logo for any reports that are created. If you would prefer, selecting the Browse button here will allow you to pick from many common image file formats, and you can upload a custom logo to use on your reports. Please note that any image you select will be resized to 150 by 150 pixels so that it will fit in the space provided within the report template. So now that we've discussed the options, let's complete the case details screen for this example. We'll use an imaginary case number of 1234. For my case type, I'll just scroll down from the drop-down menu here and use the option for Other. We've navigated and selected locations for our case files and acquired evidence. They're on the desktop. And for Scanned By, we'll add name and then a description. At this point, we now need to choose some evidence sources to add to our case. Now within AXIOM process, there are two ways to do this. At the lower right of the screen, I could select the Go to Evidence Sources button, but you may also notice on the left side of the screen is our navigation pane. Highlighted is the Case Details screen because that's what we are currently viewing. Beneath that is Evidence Sources, and if I select that, it brings us to the Evidence Sources screen, just the same as selecting the Go to Evidence Sources button in the lower right of the screen. Now, from evidence sources, before we go any further, I need to point something out. I'm using an AXIOM Cyber license, so you'll see I do have the option to acquire a remote computer. If you are using a Magnet AXIOM license, you will not see that option. The other items that we're going to be demonstrating here will be the same whether you are using Magnet AXIOM or AXIOM Cyber. Now let's walk through the different evidence source types and see what our options are. First, let's say that the piece of evidence we'd like to add is going to be computer evidence. I simply select the icon here for computer. I can see I now have options for Windows, Mac, Linux, or Chromebook. After selecting any of these, you will have other options to choose from. In this case, let's say we'd like to load in Windows computer evidence. I select Windows. We can see that AXIOM process is giving us the choice to either load evidence that has been previously acquired or to acquire new evidence. First, let's take a look at what the Acquire Evidence section looks like. As you can see, there's a listing of the local drives attached to this system. This would even include drives that are connected via a write blocking device. If I select one of the disks listed here, we'll see we have options for different image types, including E01 or RAW format. I could also select all files and folders to acquire logical content, or I could select the quick option to do a targeted acquisition. Each of the selections here has a hyperlink for additional information. This brings up a good opportunity to mention another feature. If we select an evidence item or start down the path of choosing an evidence item and realize we've made a mistake, we can simply use the back button at the lower right corner of the screen to return to the previous screen. Let's do this and return to the screen where we can choose to load or acquire Windows Computer evidence. Let's take a look at the options for loading Windows Computer evidence. From here we can see our options include Drive, Image, Files and Folders, Volume Shadow Copy, or Memory. If I select Drive, AXIOM Process will show me a listing of the physical drives and logical volumes on those disks. Notice that one of the entries here has a padlock icon indicating some type of encryption. If I select Back and select the option for Image, from this window I'll just point out there are a variety of supported image types, including common RAW formats, AFF4, encase images, FTK images, segmented images, virtual machine disk images, Apple disk images, and archives. To close that, I'll hit Cancel and again use the back button. Now we'll take a look at the Files and Folders option, which is useful when you have items you have manually exported from an evidence item, forensic image, or an AXIOM case that which you would like to add into your existing case for processing. Using the back button, you can also select the process for volume shadow copies, either from a connected drive or disk image, and RAM captures. Now I'm going to use the back button to return to the main evidence sources screen. This time, instead of looking at computer-based evidence, let's take a look at mobile evidence. As before, selecting mobile then presents me with additional options, including Android, iOS, Windows Phone, Kindle Fire, media transfer protocol devices, and SIM card. You'll find the evidence selection process here similar to what we saw with computer. As you make choices regarding your evidence source, AXIOM Process will guide you down a path. As you are likely aware, mobile device acquisition methods change rapidly, and many techniques are covered in the Magnet Forensics Training AX300 Advanced Mobile Forensics course. As with computer evidence, there are multiple types of acquisition methods available depending on the specific device and level of access you have to that device. For some Android devices, Magnet AXIOM and AXIOM Cyber have the ability to bypass handset lock codes using known exploits or custom recovery images. With iOS, we can acquire evidence directly from the device, or we can connect to a gray key device. With mobile device evidence, Magnet AXIOM and AXIOM Cyber have the ability to acquire evidence directly from the device. Additionally, Magnet AXIOM and AXIOM Cyber can ingest mobile device acquisitions completed with many other popular forensic tools. Using the back button to return to the main Select Evidence Sources screen, we'll now choose Cloud and take a look at the options available for these evidence sources. Again, you have the option to acquire or load evidence. If we choose Acquire Evidence, we'll be presented with a checkbox indicating we have proper search authorization to continue. Obviously, what that authorization looks like for you varies from one location to another. I'll check the box, and we are then presented with the cloud platforms which we can acquire data from. The list of available platforms varies between Magnet AXIOM and AXIOM Cyber. On my screen, you can see the currently supported cloud acquisition platforms for AXIOM Cyber. You will find that many cloud platforms offer multiple authentication methods in order to access the data. As an example, if I select Google, notice we could utilize a username and password, Google Chrome authentication, external browser authentication, and account token. The authentication method you use can have an effect on the acquisition types you are able to perform, as some cloud stored data is only available with certain authentication methods. With respect to cloud data acquisition, the Magnet Forensics AX320 Cloud and Internet Investigations course is an excellent source of information for the constantly evolving world of cloud stored data. Also, a knowledge base article is linked in the video description detailing best practices and considerations for cloud acquisition, along with a link to the status of supported cloud acquisition platforms within the Magnet Forensics customer portal. I'll again use the back button to return to the main Select Evidence Sources screen. And this time we'll actually add an evidence item so that we can look at some of the different search types. I'm again going to select Computer, then Windows, and finally Load Evidence. Finally, we'll select Image and then navigate to the location on our computer where our image file is stored. For this example, I'm using a segmented EO1. Notice that by default, AXIOM process is only showing the first segment of the file, and this is the one you would need to utilize to load into your case. To add it to my case, I simply select the item and then choose Open. AXIOM process will confirm all of the segments for this image file are available before continuing, as shown in the status message on my screen. If any are missing, an error message will be displayed. We can select OK, and AXIOM process will now show the entries for the physical drive and any logical volumes it contains. Examiners have the ability to deselect anything that may not be of interest to the investigation or to comply with scope requirements of the search. Additionally, you can expand any of the entries listed here to see the folder structure within that evidence container. For this example, I'll leave all of the items selected and then choose Next. You're now presented with the Select Search Type screen. There are 4 different search types within AXIOM process. Those are Full, Quick, Custom, and Sector Level. On my screen, you can see that AXIOM process has already chosen some of these for me. In the example of our Windows computer disk image shown here, notice that the entry for partition 3, which is the user data partition from the drive, is already defaulted to a full search type. A full search will include pagefile and swapfile.sys, the $log file, the master file table within this NTFS volume, all files and folders on the drive, volume shadow copy data, unallocated space, file slack space, hyperfill.sys, and any uninitialized file area. Using the drop-down menu under the search type column, I could select Quick. Notice what changes. I'm left with pagefile and swapfile.sys, the $log file, $MFT, and common areas. Using the Quick search type causes AXIOM process to ignore certain areas on the drive, such as volume shadow copies, unallocated space, and file slack space, which are traditionally slower to search through. If we change the drop-down under search type to Custom, you'll see that AXIOM process presents you a list of all of the available search areas on this particular evidence item with a series of checkboxes. This allows examiners to pick and choose items that are of interest for their investigation. Finally, there's an option for sector level search. Sector level is useful for evidence items with an unknown file system. Note that in this example for partition 3, Microsoft NTFS and the size is already listed in parentheses. Partition 3 from this evidence item has a known and identified file system. However, partition 2 lists no file system information, and AXIOM process has defaulted to a sector level search for that. This search type reads raw data from the evidence item, searching for artifacts that can be carved from that data, without regard for any underlying file or folder structure. For this example, I'm going to return partition 3 to the default of full search, and then select the Next button, which brings us back to the Select Evidence Sources screen. Even though I just added a previously acquired disk image, I can now choose to acquire a new disk image, or acquire a mobile device, or add previously acquired evidence from any of the supported platforms. There is no limitation on the combinations of evidence types that you can add to a case within AXIOM process. The next evidence item we're loading in is a USB flash drive that was associated with a Windows 10 computer. For this example, to add that to our case, we'll go up and select Computer, then Windows, Load, we'll choose Image, and we'll navigate to the storage location for the image of the USB flash drive. Select that and then choose Open. As with our computer disk image, which we added previously, we have the same Add Files and Folders options here, and on the next screen, the Select Search type. We'll next through these and return to the main Select Evidence Sources screen. The final piece of evidence that we're going to add to this case is mobile evidence. To add mobile evidence, we simply go up and select Mobile. The item we're going to use is a Google Pixel 3a, so we'll select Android, Load Evidence, and Image. We'll navigate to the storage location for the image of that mobile device. Select it, choose Open, and again we have the Add Files and Folders options. At this point, we've added 3 evidence items to our case: a Windows 10 disk image, a USB flash drive associated with that computer, and an Android mobile device image. The next thing we're going to do is talk about processing details, which you can see on the left side of the screen within the navigation pane. From the Evidence Sources screen, I'll select Go to Processing Details at the lower right of the screen, And notice Processing Details is now highlighted in the navigation pane on the left side of the screen. Within AXIOM Process, I can either select one of the Processing Details items from the navigation pane on the left, or by using the hyperlinks for those same items listed in the main part of the screen. For this example, I'll start by selecting Search Archives and Mobile Backups from the navigation pane on the left side of the screen. With this option, I can decide how AXIOM Process will search mobile backups and compound files, such as zip and tar files, encountered during case processing. With regard to mobile backups, if you believe there are encrypted backups in the evidence items you are searching and you know the password, or you think you know the password, you could enter that password or a list of passwords within this text entry field. AXIOM Process will use those passwords in an attempt to decrypt those mobile backups. The last option is for nested archives and mobile backups, such as a zip file which contains another zip, where examiners can choose to limit how many levels deep within a compound file AXIOM Process will attempt, the default being 5. The next item listed beneath Processing Details will vary depending on your license. If you're using an AXIOM Cyber license, you will have an option to decode file-based encryption. When you have the appropriate decryption keys available for certain implementations of Dell DDPE encryption, you can provide the listed information for AXIOM Process to utilize for decryption during case processing and specify the evidence source. Now, let's talk about adding keywords to a search. With this option, you'll notice that there are 2 keyword search types. An artifacts keyword search looks for keywords in only the artifacts that AXIOM Process recovers. Search results are limited to the artifacts that AXIOM Process supports, but the results are found quickly. An all-content keyword search is a byte-for-byte search of data in the encoding type that you specify. AXIOM Process supports ASCII as well as UTF-7, 8, 16, and 32 for all-content keyword searches. Examiners can choose to add keywords individually or as a keyword list by pointing to a text file with one search term per line. As an example, I'll add a keyword list to this case. Once selecting the text file containing the keywords, I can see that AXIOM Process is indicating there's one record associated with this keyword list. That keyword is magnet forensics separated by a single space. If I wanted to search for the terms magnet forensics as separate keywords, I could include them as individual entries within the text file keyword list or add them individually to my case now. This will cause AXIOM Process to return results on either term. With either keyword search type, examiners have the ability to select the option for regex or grep on individual search terms for pattern matching, and when using all content keyword search types, examiners can select the encoding method used as well as designate keywords as being case sensitive. The next item under Processing Details is Extract Text from Files. Enabling this option causes AXIOM Process to extract text from PDF files and pictures using optical character recognition. Now we'll select Calculate Hash Values from the navigation pane and review the options here. If I want to calculate the hash for all files, I simply check the box to configure AXIOM Process to calculate the hash value for all files within the evidence set. Below that is a link for Configure Hash Settings, which will bring up the AXIOM Process settings menu covered in an earlier video. As a reminder, examiners can make changes to the hash settings within AXIOM Process, including setting a file size limit for hashing and changing from the default of MD5 to SHA-1 or MD5 and SHA-1 so that AXIOM Process will calculate hash values based on your needs. The next section is to tag files with matching hash values. This allows examiners to import a text file containing either MD5 or SHA-1 hash values with one hash value per line. As an example, I'll select Add File and then choose the text file of hash values that I'd like to add to my case. Once loaded, AXIOM Process will indicate there are 3 records here, and any matches to these hash values will be automatically tagged with hash match. Examiners do have the option to change this tag to something relevant to their particular investigation. The final section within Calculate Hash Values of AXIOM Process is to ignore non-relevant files. This allows examiners to include a hash list of files which are ignored during processing. Common uses of this feature are to import the National Software Reference Library hash list from NIST to exclude files that are known to be non-relevant to a case. Next, we'll move to Categorize chats. This is another feature within AXIOM Process which leverages Magnet AI functionality to categorize chats consistent with grooming and luring or sex-related content. This feature is more than a simple keyword search and does not necessarily work on individual messages, but rather rethreaded chat conversations. Any matches meeting the criteria for grooming and luring or sex-related content will automatically be tagged as possible grooming and luring or possible sex-related content, as shown on my screen. The next section consists of features within AXIOM Process for categorizing pictures and videos. The first option is to build picture comparison, which gives examiners the ability to utilize content-based image recognition, or CBIR, within AXIOM Examine to locate visually similar images. This can be useful in a couple of different ways. First, when locating an image of interest within an evidence set, the picture comparison feature can be leveraged to locate other images in that data set which contain similar features. A second use case is loading an image of interest external to the data set and using CBIR to locate images within the evidence set containing similar features. Next, examiners can enable the various Magnet AI models to assist in the categorization of pictures. Scrolling through the list, you can see that there are several categories which can be enabled. Some of these are flagged, indicating that they may require additional processing time. Once enabling any of the categories here, a tag will be enabled and automatically applied to any matches. The tag name can be changed by examiners. Also in this section is the categorization of pictures and videos by hash value using data from Project Vic or CADE. In order to utilize this functionality, examiners will import their hash list from either Project Vic or CADE using the Add Hash List button visible on the screen. AXIOM Process will then search for and categorize those images within the evidence sources selected for processing. Moving to the next section, Add CPS Data to Search, examiners have the option to load data from the Child Rescue Coalition Child Protection System website, which is commonly used by ICAC investigators to identify peer-to-peer file sharing network users believed to be sharing illicit material. Importing this data into AXIOM Process can be used to identify IP addresses, usernames, file hashes, file names, and other activity associated with a particular target on these file sharing networks. If you are using an AXIOM Cyber license, the next section allows examiners to implement searching with YARA rule sets. You have the option to manually add or import YARA rules to identify matching files. A link is included in the video description with additional information. A couple of notes. You can use any of the rule sets included in AXIOM Process, which you can see on my screen, or manually create your own rules or import existing rule sets that you may have. Selecting the edit link shown here will again open the AXIOM Process settings window, allowing you to navigate to and specify additional folders containing these rule sets. The last option within Processing Details is labeled Find More Artifacts. Once selecting this section, you can see there are two main components. Use the Dynamic App Finder and search for custom file types. The Dynamic App Finder will search for SQLite databases contained in your evidence files. Any SQLite databases which are recovered that are not associated with a supported artifact within AXIOM Examine will be displayed for your review at the completion of evidence processing. Examiners then have the ability to preview the content of the various tables from those SQLite database files to determine if there are any of relevance to your investigation. This can be particularly useful with third-party mobile device applications such as those used for chat messages. The Dynamic App Finder can be used to create custom artifacts which can display details such as the sender, recipient, message content, timestamp, geolocation data, URLs, and other information depending on what is available. Analysis of the Dynamic App Finder results is a manual process, and the best approach may be to utilize this feature during secondary processing of evidence items after locating an unsupported application that may be of interest in your investigation. The Magnet Forensics Training AX300 Advanced Mobile Forensics course provides hands-on practical usage of the Dynamic App Finder. The second area listed on the Find More Artifacts screen is Search for Custom File Types. During the search of your various evidence sources, AXIOM Process may locate file types which are not associated with a specific artifact. AXIOM Process includes an Excel spreadsheet containing some common file types examiners may be interested in recovering that serve as examples. Selecting the Edit Custom File Types list will allow you to review and edit this information. Editing this spreadsheet allows an examiner to configure AXIOM Process to search for files based on their extension, or by providing the known hexadecimal values for the file's header and footer if applicable. Now we can move to the next section within AXIOM Process, Artifact Details. Notice there are entries for computer artifacts, mobile artifacts, and two that are grayed out corresponding to cloud and vehicle artifacts. Once you have added evidence sources to a case, AXIOM Process will only show you the artifacts associated with those evidence sources. So for this example, we've added computer and mobile device evidence, which results in those being the two artifact categories available to us. Additionally, you can configure AXIOM Process for parsing only or parsing and carving of artifacts from your evidence sources. Selecting the computer artifacts entry, I can see this is further broken down into artifact categories. A checkbox indicates all of the artifacts within that artifact category are selected. A blue filled box indicates a subset of those artifacts are selected. And an empty box, such as that under memory, indicates none of those artifacts are selected. At the top right, I can see that AXIOM Process has chosen the All Artifacts default profile. This is a drop-down menu giving me access to additional processing profiles once they are created within this installation of Magnet AXIOM or AXIOM Cyber. To the right of that is the Profile Options link, which gives examiners control over the various artifact profiles they may create. As an example, within computer artifacts, I'll select the artifact category for web-related, and we can see the different browsers and other web-specific content AXIOM Process is going to attempt to recover from our evidence sources. I could leave these as the default, or I could deselect artifacts which I do not believe are likely to be located in this evidence. Considering this example is using the image of a Windows 10 computer and an associated USB flash drive, it is unlikely I would find artifacts related to the Safari web browser. I could deselect that. Artifact profiles are useful when you have knowledge about a case and the applications being used, or are interested in artifacts specific to a certain activity or application. The Magnet Forensics Training AX200 AXIOM Examinations course covers artifact details along with creation and use of profiles in greater detail. The final selection within the Artifact Details section is the selection for Parse and Carve artifacts. By default, AXIOM Process will both parse and carve data. Examiners may select to only parse existing data, with the option to carve those same artifacts later. Once you have added evidence sources to your case, configured all of the processing details to meet your needs, and are satisfied with the selections made in the Artifact Details section, you can select the Analyze Evidence button at the bottom of the navigation pane. From here, AXIOM Process will present an overview of the evidence sources you have added for case processing. At this point, we can select the Analyze Evidence button at the lower right of the screen to begin our evidence processing. AXIOM Examine will open and items will begin to populate in the various artifact categories as they are recovered. In our next video, we will take a look at the user interface, settings, and various explorers available to us within AXIOM Examine. Once case processing is complete, you can select the Close button at the lower right of the AXIOM Process window. In AXIOM Examine, you will find yourself at the case dashboard and may see a message in the status bar indicating that processing is complete. Simply click the Load New Evidence button to refresh the case with the new artifacts loaded, and you will then be ready to begin reviewing your evidence within AXIOM Examine.